Distinguished colleagues, dear friends of HRNK, thank you very much for joining us today for the last Zoom program of the year and the last publication of the year. Let me begin by greeting our board members, Ambassador Robert King, former Special Envoy for North Korean human rights issues, Colonel Professor David Maxwell, of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. I am delighted to see that Ambassador Joe Detrani has also joined us today, together with HRNK report author David Hawk. I am delighted to introduce our guest today. First and foremost, we know Joseph Bermudez Jr., Joe Bermudez, as a human rights defender and author of 18 HRNK reports that since October 2012 have combined satellite imagery analysis with North Korean escapee testimony coming from former prisoners, from former officials who used to be in charge of running the prison camps. Joe Bermudez has made tremendous contributions to mapping out North Korea's vast system of unlawful imprisonment across a multitude of different types of facilities. Today, we're launching and presenting a report on Chŭngsan Detention Facility #1. In addition to being a human rights defender and champion of human rights, Joseph Bermudez is an internationally recognized analyst, award-winning author, and lecturer on North Korean defense and intelligence affairs, and ballistic missile development in developing countries. He is also a senior fellow with the Center for Strategic and International Studies with CSIS. He has been founder and chief analytics officer of KPA Associates. He's a very widely published author, 4 books, and more than 300 articles. We are delighted that Joe has concentrated his efforts on this report on Detention Facility #11, Chŭngsan in North Korea. This is the most sizable report produced under this project, more than 150 pages. I would encourage the audience to ask questions throughout the program. You don't necessarily have to wait for a Q&A session. We are delighted that you're taking time away from your loved ones and families right before the holidays to be joining us today. Joe, let me, and before I turn it over to you, let me remind the participants that questions can be asked by raising your hand and also using the Q&A function or the chat function available at the bottom of the screen in Zoom. Joe, I had the privilege of knowing you before I became executive director of HRNK, and that was, 9.5 years ago, July 2011. Shortly afterwards, you called me, you offered to help, you proposed that we collaborate. Could you please tell us more about how this project came into being? Could you please tell us more about the methodology employed over the past 8 years? I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank everyone for attending today. And before we get in, I want to say happy holidays to everybody. I guess it began, like you said, around 2011. We met at a conference and we started talking. We hit it off both as colleagues and with a mutual interest in human rights in North Korea. I proposed a series of reports. You liked the idea, we worked to develop it, and we started to produce them. Over the years, they've gotten not only longer in length, but more detailed. And interestingly, as we've revisited certain facilities, we've been able to update the reports and provide additional analysis and details. It's been encouraging to see how people around the world have been willing to step up and provide information, provide corrections too. We're not above corrections. It's been a challenge too. it's tough sometimes disambiguating location names, resolving conflicts between different sources information, uh, listening to former detainees' testimony, and correlating that not only with time, but with what they're saying they saw or experienced. And this is one of the beautiful things about satellite imagery in this use case. A former detainee can describe, well, I lived in this building and this is where they did something else over in that building. And we can either confirm or deny whether that happened during that period. And quite surprisingly, there have been more accurate statements than inaccurate statements. They might not have the year right, and that's perfectly understandable considering uh, the conditions they lived under and the emotional and psychological impact that has upon them. But it has been truly remarkable. And we've taken that information, and especially in this report, we've been able to expand upon it. We took what they said, the former detainees, former guards and officials, and other input from different sources. And we were able to expand on what was said to develop an even better picture. It also opened our eyes up to several things that have gaps in the information. And I'll show you a few things in a minute. Greg and I have talked about it quite a few occasions. Where does a person who had an interest solely in defense and intelligence affairs become interested in human rights? And if I might digress a little, talk about my childhood. At the end of World War II, my father, who was in the US Army, 101st Airborne, had an opportunity to see a number of the former Nazi detention camps. And the stories he told me as a young child have stayed with me to today. They made a tremendous impression upon me. He was also in Austria after the war at the Marcus W. Ward Displaced Persons Camp. And within that camp, they had a separate camp for captured Nazi officials. He would help track them down just in Austria, in Germany to a lesser degree. And he talked about the unrepentant nature of these individuals and their casual references to the treatment of quote unquote inferior people, inferior races. And that also made a tremendous effect on my entire life. So when I met Greg and we talked about a project to bring light to this dark area, it was just a natural for me to go with it. Greg asked about methodology. He also mentioned that we've had the great opportunity to interview a large number of defectors, a large number of former escapees, a large number of officials around the world who have graciously and sometimes painfully shared information with us in the hope that we could get the message out. We've taken that, typically I would combine that with timelines, and then combine it with available imagery. And we took that and we developed it. We'd often go back to the same individuals after we came up with a draft. They would comment again and we'd refine it and continue to refine it till we reached a point where we felt that it needed to be published. How's that, Greg? Or would you like me to actually describe some of the imagery analysis procedures?
I think that is perfect, Joe. And before we move on to the next question, let me also welcome Roberta Cohen, HRNK Co-Chair Emeritus, who has joined us. Let me welcome Alan Al Anderson, veteran imagery analyst and also veteran of the Korean War, who is as youthful and fit today as he was back in the day during the Korean War. Thank you for joining, Al. And also Stanley Kober, great supporter and HRNK donor. Joe, before we get to the actual detention facility number 11, what would be, based on the 18 reports that you have authored with HRNK, what would be your general overview of North Korea's vast system of imprisonment, vast system of unlawful imprisonment in many cases, based on the baseline and update reports you have been authoring with HRNK for the past 8 years?
The most, it's hard to say, but I'll say the thing that most impressed me, it still impresses me, is the breadth of it, the size of it, the resources dedicated to building it, maintaining it. It's truly blown me away. The second thing, and maybe it's just as equal with the first thing, um, the horrific stories from the former detainees, defectors, like, former prison guards. Uh, it's disturbing. It's disturbing in its breadth, both the size of it, the complexity of it, the resources. It's truly stunning, and it's not unusual for me when I'm looking for one thing to find what appears to be another detention facility, and I put it on this list. Amanda O does a great job with this also as she looks around. And this list keeps growing. It doesn't shrink. That's the scary part of it. And on a few occasions where we have reports where camps have been closed, what we see are, yes, they appear to be closed. The activity, level of activity, type of activity has changed. But what we also see are other things springing up elsewhere. If we look at the camp in Pukchang, we see that they did close it, okay? Every indication is they did. But if you look in the mountains that were within the general area of the camp, all of a sudden you see these detention facilities popping up. So they might have closed part of it, but they're actually maintaining part of it also. They go through great effort to hide a number of these activities. The fact that you have crematories in so many of them indicates a large loss of life. I'll leave it there because I could probably go on describing what I've observed over time for hours, probably.
Thank you, Joe. You have mentioned Amanda Mortwet O, who is project officer on the satellite imagery project, and also HRNK human rights attorney. She's done great work on this project, and so has my colleague Rosa Park. This has been the result of terrific teamwork that you have led over the years. Joe, I think we are ready to move on to today's topic, which is Chŭngsan Detention Facility number 11. Perhaps you can share a few satellite images with the audience. In North Korea, of course, we have identified various types of detention facilities, from political prison camps to re-education to forced labor camps to mobile labor brigades. This is the first time that this facility is analyzed using satellite imagery. Amanda Mortwedo reminded me this morning that both HRNK in David Hawk's reports and NKDB have addressed this facility, but satellite imagery had never been used before. And although NKDB categorizes this facility as a Kyohwaso re-education through labor camp, what would be your thoughts on how we should categorize it? So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you. And let me share my screen. Do you see it?
Joe, I can see it, and I think that everybody else can see it. Excellent.
Okay, great. Let me just maximize it. Okay, one of the things that I found very interesting is that, as Greg has mentioned, it's been described as several different types of camps. The best we can piece together at the present time is that the camps began in either late 60s, mid 70s. We're trying to refine that as we collect additional information. And it's changed types and to a certain degree, the class of prisoners that it includes. This is a work in progress, and we see this morphing from one type of facility to another, back to the first, and today it appears to be a quantly so, and but still that's still a question we're working on. We have seen it change and expand. One of the things that we identified, you'll have to excuse me as I page through this, and you can find all this in the report itself. This is an image, unfortunately it is not of the greatest resolution, of the facility in 1975. We can, if we enlarge this, and I'm not going to do it right here, many of the facilities which we identify today in 2020 were there back in 1975. The fact that it's large, it's not the largest, by square miles, but it's still very large. And unlike all the other camps, there isn't a defined border, a defined security fence, a defined security patrol road. Rather, it's composed of numerous small little facilities throughout the area. The headquarters, a support area, some Army bases are actually within this boundary, but there were also numerous detention facilities. And we've seen these detention facilities expand and contract over the years. Maybe not contract, one or two have contracted, but I'd rather use the word develop and morph into something a little different. But it's been here since at least 1975. To give you the complexity of the camp, this map shows you how dense it is. We have facilities or detainee divisions, because that's what former detainees call these, detainee divisions dispersed all the way around. You can see them in green. Okay. We also have at least 4 unidentified detainee divisions. And we call them this because they're identical in design and mission that all the others do. And one of the reasons we declare them as unidentified is because we don't know the names or the numbers of them. But they're there. And one of the reasons we don't is because the former detainees we've spoken to haven't been in those areas. They've been confined to their particular facility. And I'm gonna scoot down and, okay. This is the base headquarters, the main facility. And it's typical of what the facilities we see at many other North Korean detention facilities. There's a main headquarters. I don't know if you can see my arrow, but over here, administrative office, we have the typical monument, we have the cultural/education hall, and nearby, there's typically a barracks or a security barracks. In this particular image, you'll see one of the detainee divisions. This one has been identified by former detainees as detainee division number 5. Now, this is how it looked back in 2002. 2002 being the earliest high resolution image we have of the facility. We're at present trying to secure the declassification of additional imagery prior to this, but that is a long process. So let me go down and you can see, well, you can see how the road runs right by the main gate of the headquarters. Yet here we are several years later, and what they've done is they've rerouted the main road. And this was accompanied by changes throughout the facility, upgrading or expanding the different detainee divisions, eliminating one detainee division, doing other infrastructure development. Let me move down and I go quickly. Okay, one of the questions we're almost always asked is, where did they bury the bodies? If all these reports of high death rates are true, then where they buried the bodies? Unlike other camps, we have yet to locate a crematory here. It's something we keep looking for. We haven't detected it yet. If there is one, it could be just outside the boundary we've looked at, outside the boundary which we've been told is the boundary of the camp as it is today. But what we have are reports that this hill on the left side of the image is called Flower Hill. And the detainees call that this because the bodies are buried in shallow graves here. And what happens is that during the spring and summer, the hill blossoms with a great number of flowers. And they believe it's because of the decaying bodies and the fertilizer they provide. Regrettably, in satellite imagery, we cannot yet confirm that. The challenge is the resolution of the available imagery. Okay, this 2002 image has a resolution of around 80, 90 centimeters. That means the distance on the ground between the centers of 2 pixels is 80 to 90 centimeters. Well, that's pretty poor from high resolution imagery. At least today it is. We see scarring on the ground, and you see scarring here, but we cannot definitively say that that is grave sites. We do see traditional Korean burial mounds throughout the camp, but given that these are political prisoners, it is unlikely that they would be used for the prisoners themselves. And in fact, we have former detainee testimony saying that this isn't true. So you notice there's a hospital in the center. It's just being built. The detainees tell us that, gave us an idea when it was being built. We can confirm it with this imagery. And we also see something that they really didn't have an opportunity to see. We see the hospital change, and you can watch it as we go along. Here it's just under construction. Okay, here it's partially configured, partially finished, and we see an entrance and a guard tower. So you normally don't have a guard tower over a hospital. This is for detainees and members of the staff that operate the hospital. Okay. Once again, we see all of a sudden it's changing again. They're expanding it. We also see the establishment of small other facilities. This ground scarring here, maybe it isn't open graves or grave sites, burial sites. I just can't put a positive confirmation to it at this time. Once again, the wall around the hospital is expanded, the hospital itself is expanded, and it's still under construction. And notice that the guard tower and the gate have been moved. Once again, we see another new facility under construction next to it. Okay, we see this, it's almost finished. And here we go, winter scene. Winter is always hard to provide good satellite imagery of because of the reflection of the snow. They're still building at the hospital. You don't build and continue to build a hospital unless there's a need for it. Here, we see a second guard tower being built. In other words, the prison population is using it. The detainee population has likely increased. Okay. Let me come down to, so often we hear and see about pig farms. All defectors talk about the area, the Chŭngsan number 11 detention facility is used to provide pigs for the elite in Pyongyang. We see pig farms all over North Korea, and we see poultry farms and other livestock farms throughout North Korea. These are somewhat unique in that they're small, they're defined, they have an entrance, a secure entrance, and guard towers around them. Okay. If we were to zoom in, you would see open pens. And if we zoomed in really closely on one or two of the better images, you actually see that there's livestock in them. Most of them appear to be pigs. There's no doubt about that. One or two look like they could be goats. And in one or two cases, there's probably poultry. Many of the detainees report that not only are they responsible for maintaining these quote unquote pig farms, but also for raising grain and feed for the livestock. This is one of the nicer pig farms in North Korea. This one's inside as opposed to outside where they typically graze. Let us come down to 43. Here is detainee division number 2. You can see that we have 2 pig farm houses on either side. But in the center, we have rows and rows of open pens. Now, if I go to 45, all of a sudden it's changed. All those central pens are gone, and we went to smaller open pens. And it appears, see the dark shading here, as opposed to the light shading? This dark shading is probably a small collection of pigs, and the white shading means there's no pigs. In this case, one former rancher told me, well, in these 2 cases, the feed's probably been dropped near this end, or maybe spread out a little here. Here it's been spread out more evenly. Okay, this is how it looked in 2011. And now let's move forward. And here we go again. There have been minor changes. Okay, they've added a small greenhouse. There's a water tank outside. The part that used to be part of the facility, they've reduced it. You can see the original perimeter has now been turned into gardens. We still have the open pig pens. Let me go down. And I encourage you to actually download the report and read it and compare with the imagery. It really makes a difference. This is one of the more unique facilities within the entire camp. We don't have a number for this, so we provisionally identified it as Detainee Division A. We see a facility that doesn't have guard posts, but it does have 2 entrances. But the interesting thing is that, well, 3rd entrance, sorry, the wall doesn't continue this way. And it seems like as if there was something here before, but we just don't know. The elements you see over here, this trench is part of a coastal defense unit for the Korean People's Army. But we're going to watch this area. So as we move forward, looks pretty much the same, although we lost the entrance over here. Then in 2011, we say that the wall's been removed. We see that we have roofing over most of these. We can see some open pens. Now the wall that was here is completely removed, but a new facility has been established here. And it's got high walls completely around it, has 1 secure entrance and 2 guard posts. This suggests that a separate class of detainees being held here. Probably one of greater interest to the regime in Pyongyang to isolate them in such a small facility. Here it is in 2015. It's still there. We've seen some minor changes, but the livestock pens are still there. The detainee, the secure facility right here remains. But all of a sudden, 2 years later, it's been raised. We have no explanation for that. We also noticed that within this larger facility, they've built a wall in the southwest corner, right underneath a guard post, suggesting possibly that the detainees that were held here have now been moved here. That's speculation. We need to confirm that. And here's how it looks most recently. Unfortunately, the November 9th, 2019 is the latest image of sufficient quality that we could acquire at this time. We're seeking to acquire additional information and additional imagery. You can see that the pens are still here, although they're slightly changed. This here, this brown spot, there's likely some sort of fence here, and what we're looking at are groups of animals just out in the open, slightly detained though. With that, I've probably taken up enough of time, Greg, so I will stop sharing and go to Q&A, and we'll move on.
Joe, this was terrific. Thank you very much. And yes, we do have questions. And the first one comes from our board member, Colonel David Maxwell, of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Colonel Maxwell points out that we're all grateful to you for highlighting and documenting these crimes against humanity being perpetrated inside the guerrilla dynasty in the Gulag state. His question is personal. You routinely witness so much tragedy as you conduct your research. Is there anything in particular that gives you hope for the future? Are there any positive anecdotes that you could share and that help you keep a positive view on your important work and your great contributions? So basically it boils down to this. What keeps you going in the face of such suffering of not only 120,000 prisoners, but overall 25 million Koreans living in the North? Colonel Maxwell thanks you for your great work. Joe, back to you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the compliment. It's a good question. I'll have to go back to my father. You know, he would frequently tell me that somewhere, somehow, sometime, someone has to draw a line in the sand and say enough's enough. And he would tell me that in my life, I'm going to have to do that. So I'm doing it in the best way I can at the present moment. My wife and my children are surprisingly supportive. My daughter and her family, she's married, established a nonprofit in Africa to care for orphan girls in Kenya. My oldest son has himself involved himself with social issues, especially for those with disabilities. And my youngest son helps us with a nonprofit here we have in Longmont to address hardcore hunger. It's amazing how much hunger there is in the United States. This, my children, my family, my wife have helped me continue. Do I see positive signs? Regrettably, not in North Korea. But the fact that everyone on this call is interested in listening and willing to take their own time, and many of you have actually been directly involved, that gives me hope, as do the Nuremberg trials. I'm waiting for those for North Korea.
Thank you very much, Joe. And next, I have a couple of questions from our colleague, Amanda Mortwet-O, who is asking you, of course, you are a well-known expert on North Korean security issues. How, if at all, has this security-related work informed your work on human rights and imagery analysis you have completed for HRNK? The second question is more technical. You often include declassified satellite imagery in our reports, as you have done, of course, as you explained for this report on Chŭngsan Detention Center number 11. Can you please comment on your use of this declassified imagery and how it informs your analysis?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll start with the second because that's when I remembered. I'm getting old. We have stories, or not stories, we have reports that a camp began at a certain time, or that it's been around for years and years. Well, we take the declassified satellite imagery and we examine it and compare it to what the former detainees say or what other sources inform us about, and we can confirm or deny whether it happened during the period that we have imagery for. So we have imagery from 1962 all the way up to about 1984 that's been declassified. The resolution was poor in 62 and much better in 84. Not as good as it is today. And then our archive of imagery, commercial satellite imagery from today begins about 2000, 2002 and goes to present. So we have this gap in the middle. And we'd like to see a greater effort to declassify much of that. We have requests in. Anytime I talk to somebody in a position, I mention the desire for this and the importance of it, to tell the story. We need to tell the story in as much detail as possible for those future war crimes, well, not war crimes, but crimes against humanity trials. And I truly hope that they do happen. The first question was, I'm sorry.
It was about your military security background and how it helped, if at all, with your investigation of human rights violations at detention centers.
Mm-hmm. It's helped dramatically, both ways. It goes both ways. So I've actually have a draft of a book on the development of North Korean intelligence and security, internal security forces. It's a very rough draft at this time because I'm too busy. But that has certainly informed what I see on the ground. The times when I've been able to interview defectors or escapees from North Korea who were in the intelligence or security community allow me to bring that information into my understanding of the camps. And once again, as the former detainees provide me with information on the organization and the operations of the organizations that are detaining them or whom captured them or detained them initially, then brought them to the camps. This helps fill in gaps in understanding. I then take this and try to piece it together, and I speak with officials around the world, and this all helps and benefits both sides of my life.
Thank you, Joe. Next, I have 3 questions from our colleague, Pek Chun, who, by the way, authored a terrific piece entitled "Don't Leave North Koreans in the Dark" in Foreign Affairs. It came out today. It's a piece that speaks up against the South Korean gag law that curbs the vehicles and bans some vehicles that take information into North Korea. With Chun, I was absolutely delighted and honored to co-sign representations made to the UK Foreign Secretary over the weekend by Lord David Alton in the UK, together with many others, prominent North Korean escapees, Assemblyman Tae-Yong-ho and Chi Song-ho. Chun is playing an extraordinarily important role within this community of ours. So here come the questions. I'll take them one at a time. Joe, the first question is, how do you deal with those who build those draw those false equivalences between regimes such as the Kim regime in North Korea that have no respect for human rights and commit crimes against humanity, and countries with less than perfect human rights records? It comes to that example we're so familiar with. Well, yes, they're torturing, imprisoning, slaughtering tens of thousands, but we have our own detention here in the United States. How about that? Why don't you worry about that first? So what would your response be to that?
Well, I typically stay to the imagery analysis side, but I'll say this. In many countries, it's just not perfect. In the United States, it's not perfect. We've seen that and come to understand that to very great degree this past year. However, there is a system. There is a system that is in place to rectify wrongs. Granted, it's not perfect, but there is a system, and people are trying, and people are being heard, and people can change it. Small groups of people can change what happens here in the United States and in other countries around the world. In North Korea, we just don't have that opportunity. It is a totalitarian state, and it's really hard for people in the United States, the Western world, and many democratic type governments to understand what a totalitarian government is. Complete and absolute rule by the state. It's arbitrary, it's capricious, and it's often lethal. In many countries, that's changing around the world. The Bill of Rights, the Universal Bill of Human Rights, that's a starting place. It's a goal that we should all be striving to. No one's perfect. No nation's perfect, but we're striving, and many other nations are striving too. You can see how human rights dominates the conversation in many enlightened nations. It doesn't in North Korea.
That is a terrific answer. The focus on the fact that none of us are perfect, but we strive to be perfect, well, to approach perfection through process. My response is that we are aware of issues within the detention system here in the United States, but on the other hand, last time I checked, we were not running political prison camps out of Leesburg, Virginia. And there is another false equivalency that I will take the liberty of addressing very briefly. We are well aware of the Han River miracle, the extraordinary South Korean economic development. We are fully aware of the extraordinary generation that in the 1980s and 1990s brought democracy to the Republic of Korea. On the other hand, to those who compare South Korea during the days of the developmental dictatorship and Kim Il-sung's North Korea, I remind them that South Korea did not run political prison camps during that time. I also remind them, of course, that as oppressive as the situation was, and it was absolutely far from ideal, there was still an opposition party. There was still an opposition which would have been absolutely unthinkable at any stage of the 72-year history of the three-generational Kim regime in North Korea. And now let me go to Chin's next question. How would you respond to people who insist that the international community should stay away from human rights? Yes, human rights is important, but first and foremost, let's focus on reducing tension and hostilities on the peninsula. We know who they are.
Yes, I can't disagree more firmly with that. Security, this is a challenge for me all the time. I forget who said it. There's something, those who give up rights for security gain neither, security. I can't remember. I wish I could remember the quote. The important thing is that you cannot have peace, true peace, without addressing, to some degree, human rights. You want a country to be internally secure, because if it's internally secure, then it's more likely to be secure at the international level, more willing to engage at the international level. If you have a nation that is not secure internally, it is going to be more concerned with suppressing human rights. And that in turn will lead to more pushback from the people and it undermines the nation internally, which then makes the country less secure in the long run. There are numerous examples of this throughout history. So when we ask for security, when we want security, we cannot ignore human rights. And I'll be honest, I'm a pragmatist. You just can't demand a complete sweep of human rights right away, but you can't ignore it either. Sorry, go ahead, Greg.
No, Joe, that was right on the mark. Perhaps it was Benjamin Franklin. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety.
That's it perfectly. My wife, who happens to be a student of the president's, is probably going to be very upset with me.
You're in trouble. A recording will be available if you're not watching already. I do have a third question from Chin as well. Today, you have presented this thorough report on Chŭngsan Detention Facility number 11. How do you recommend that advocates for human rights in North Korea use your latest report on number 11 in our collective efforts to improve the protection of human rights in North Korea?
Mm-hmm. An excellent question, and you might address it better when I'm done with my thoughts. We in the free world need to bring it to our representatives and to our governments and say, here is objective evidence that's the best available at this time about this horrific series of events that have been occurring since the Korean War. We need to address this. We need you to bring this to the international community. You need to put pressure on the international community. We need to move forward this. We cannot let this be ignored. You know, we need to shed light on the incident, on all of this. And as we build up these reports, and, you know, and everybody should be aware, we're continuing to do these reports and to update previous ones. We're building a body of evidence. We're shedding light, and we need to take this and build upon this and expand it. All of us, we need to take it to the world. Please, we look at the U.S. elections and we see how close some states were. Okay, this means that everybody in that state counted in their votes. Well, no matter how you felt about which party won or lost, you should have realized that your vote counts, your voice counts. And the same thing with human rights in North Korea. All of our voices count. We just need to have them heard more and continuously.
And if I may add, Joe, currently we are working with the International Bar Association, with the IBA, on a project to investigate North Korea's other detention facilities, mobile labor brigades, shorter-term facilities. Satellite imagery continues to be central to these efforts, as it has been to all efforts to investigate all types of detention facilities. And actually, the UN Commission of Inquiry quoted your work, and you actually testified before the UN Commission of Inquiry in Washington, D.C. I think that satellite imagery adds this tremendous potential to measure the extent of the repression and the violations, which, corroborated with witness testimony, is an extraordinarily powerful and persuasive tool. Joe, we have a question from none other than Ambassador Robert King, who wants to echo David Maxwell's thanks to you and the contributions you have made by providing hard evidence of the prison camp system in North Korea. Ambassador King says, the satellite imagery and the incredible analysis that Joe provides gives remarkable credibility to the defector accounts and to the other sources of information we have in confirming the atrocities. Joe, do you have any indication that the North Koreans understand that imagery creates a problem for them? Does the Kim regime notice that, well, Pyongyang, we have a problem? Have they taken steps to disguise or to hide the prison camps from satellites? Thank you very much.
Yes, the North Koreans very clearly understand what we're doing here at HRNK, and it's very clear that they understand the work that I've done in other areas has brought light to areas they would prefer not to have made public. I've seen, certainly in my other work, them do things deliberately to, we use a term, camouflage, conceal, and deceive, or CCD. Absolutely, we've seen that. In the camps, we see some of that. They haven't been too successful, and I won't explain exactly why, because that would be giving them another avenue to prevent me from seeing things. But yes, we've seen them not camouflage in the sense that they paint patterns on buildings, but they've tried to camouflage and use camouflage in the sense that they're making things more difficult to identify. They certainly try to deceive us in certain areas. A simple example would be to separate things further apart. Okay. Imagery analysts can at times be very lazy and only look at one very small specific thing. We make a strong effort to look beyond just the immediate area. And you might have noticed that in our Chaungsan report or the Chang report, where we describe how it appears as if they had disbanded a camp, but when we looked around, we actually saw them establish smaller, concentrated detention facilities way back in the mountains to hide them from public view. Yes, we see it in one or two cases where the crematories, unless you really know what you're looking for, you don't see them. And they may not be buildings like you would normally expect to see. There are other things, and I just won't go into them at this point in time.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Ambassador King. The next question actually comes from a colleague of ours who's a North Korean escapee. He's based in the UK, Tim Cho. He's actually the one who drafted the representations made to the UK Foreign Secretary, which I just mentioned. He's currently an inquiry clerk to the UK All-Party Parliamentary Group on North Korea. And Tim is asking, what are your thoughts? And I know you prefer to focus on satellite imagery, but his question is, what are your thoughts on influential strategy to break through the large imprisoned society of North Korea?
Well, that's the kind of question I think I would kick back to you, because you would understand it better than I do. One thing that I like the idea of, because I like the idea of a crimes tribunal when North Korea finally is reunited with South Korea, is that we actually mail to the various embassies and consulates around the world copies of our reports and whatever letters and demarches we produce, and have them sent signature required. So when they claim they didn't know, you have this body of evidence. Oh no, Your Honor, here, and you just see how they've all been delivered and how they've been delivered repeatedly over time. But Greg, this is a question I think you're much better able to handle than I am.
I'm not so sure about that, Joe, but certainly what you do, the investigation that you conduct and that we conducted at HRNK and that other NGOs conduct is critical, because if we did not know what's going on, civil society organizations would not have the material they need in order to press the DPRK regime. Joe, you're absolutely right. Practically over the past 3 decades, the North Korean human rights issue has risen at times, only to be outcompeted by very serious issues, North Korea's nuclear and ballistic missile program. After all, the lives of millions are at stake. Since we haven't been so successful for the past 30 years, maybe it's time to integrate human rights concerns into the broader North Korea policy. I hate to go back to the Neville Chamberlain example, but if Neville Chamberlain had understood the nature of the regime he was dealing with, perhaps terrible mistakes would not have been made. We need to understand the nature of the regime we're dealing with, and I would like to credit the great work of Robert Bob Collins with HRNK. He will be a speaker very soon, presenting a new report. It's very important to rebuild and re-energize the coalition of like-minded states at the United Nations, the United States, the United Kingdom, the European Union, Japan, hopefully the Republic of Korea as well. it is critical to bring back the North Korean human rights issue on the agenda of the Security Council. It is very important to see the like-minded and others again co-sponsor resolutions on DPRK human rights at the Human Rights Council and the General Assembly. It is very important for civil society, for us, to roll up our sleeves, whether we're dealing with human rights violations in North Korea or issues we're experiencing in South Korea right now. It's very important to pull no punches and remember that we have other means available to pressure and press hard on this very important issue. Joe, I have several more questions, so we might have to go a little bit over time. I hope you don't mind this.
No problem. Might I just want to interject for a minute. I think one of the key values of satellite imagery at this point in time is that it shines a light in the darkness. And with the North Koreans being more successful at locking down their borders and the number of escapees and former detainees being able to successfully leave the nation, dropping dramatically with the South Korean government's current policy of trying to mitigate what the human rights community in South Korea can do. I think that satellite imagery rises in importance because it can peek over the border and see these things, as this report shows. I'm sorry for that. Go ahead.
Joe, Tim Cho, the North Korean escapee from the UK, also wishes to thank you for giving a voice to the voiceless, to North Korean escapees and the people of North Korea, wherever they may be. We do have a question from one of our former colleagues, Emily Spa, who's a young academic and professional preparing for a long career ahead of her. Her question is, for those of us just starting out in our careers and are very passionate about North Korean human rights, what is something you believe we must do in the future or continue doing to best keep fighting this good fight?
Persevere. Persevere and make it part of your life's mission to educate people. Educate people not only about the situation in North Korea, but about human rights and the dignity of a human being. This is important. I'm constantly amazed at people I encounter who just don't understand that. So I would say that encourage people, educate people, bring them along on this journey. Absolutely.
Thank you, Joe. Again, another former colleague at HRNK and actually former student of mine as well at Hanguk University of Foreign Studies in Seoul. Jason Bartlett is asking this question, is directing this question to both of us. I think I'm going to take the first stab at the question. The question, what are your best practices for incentivizing the US government to incorporate North Korean human rights abuses into foreign policy and into the North Korea sanctions framework? How can you get the US government to actually care about human rights and basically realize that human rights are a real threat to our national security? And he gives the example of the North Korean Human Rights Act of 2004, reenacted in 2008, 12, 17, coming up in 22, I believe. He gives this example as an example of activism-led foreign policy development. What else can be done? In my view, great point. Congress has been the one branch of the US government that has been most proactive on these particular issues. There are organizations focused on activism, on lobbying Congress. Of course, there's an embedded element of activism in everything that we do at HRNK. That said, we're a research-oriented organization based on the great work of Joe Bermudez and our other authors and senior advisors at HRNK and our board members and staff member. we produce information and analysis that informs the process, supports those, informs those who are charged, for example, to draft legislation on North Korea, supports, informs officials in charge of North Korea policy. Of course, again, in our case, and organizations within this world of ours, of North Korean human rights organizations, employ various toolkits. In our case, we have held UN consultative status at the UN since April 2018. Well, during a normal year in the fall, we would have been there co-sponsoring events with like-minded states. Well, first and foremost with the UN, with the US government, but others as well. This year, of course, due to COVID, it was impossible, but NGO activism at international organizations, providing information to international organizations, is also a good way of influencing governments, UN member states, and ensuring that they support relevant action at international organizations, relevant action tackling the North Korean human rights conundrum.
At a national level, I would also like to see Congress take up the appointment of Ambassador King again as special envoy, or someone of his caliber to that position. I think that's important.
That is a truly critical point. I always tell Ambassador King that everyone within this world of North Korean human rights CSOs misses him because he was a great supporter of non-governmental organizations. Well, we don't miss him as much because he's our board member, and we're very grateful for that. That is terrific. Joe, I think this has been a terrific presentation. We must do this again the next time we feature a satellite imagery report. Best wishes to you,
Thank you.
to Diane, to everybody else, and of course, best wishes to our friends, the participants who have joined us today. The year 2021 will be a much better year, I'm sure. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year. Best and warmest wishes to all of you. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for being great friends and supporters of HRNK, our mission and our cause. Happy New Year, Merry Christmas.